Welcome to ProjectME, the podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Carter, the founder of ProjectME, multimillionaire entrepreneur, former TV newscaster, money-making expert, female empowerment speaker, and self-proclaimed office supply addict. My mission is to take the mystery out of making big money. Every week on ProjectME, the podcast, I'll share success tips, strategies, and stories from other entrepreneurs, experts, and millionaires, showing you exactly how you can achieve your most exceptional life. Now let's get to it. Exciting announcement for all of my listeners. I've officially opened my exclusive group, the ProjectME Passive Income Posse, to the public. This group is by application only, so we can keep the group high vibe and spend our time, energy, and expertise only helping those of you who truly want massive success and impact. You get live weekly trainings from me, special guest coaches, and direct access to me and my business partner for all of your questions. To learn more and apply, go to projectmewithtiffany.com, click on Work With Me, and select ProjectME Posse. And of course, any questions, feel free to DM me at ProjectME with Tiffany. Welcome to the podcast and posse, ProjectME with Tiffany Carter. I'm your host, Tiffany, and I'm going to start off today with something a little different that I know is going to get your attention, because you guys all know I'm all about the what? The hashtag facts. So how about these two facts for you? 82% of consumers feel more positive about a brand that generates customized and unique content. That's from Demand Metric. And then another one is color and visual elements improves brand recognition by as much as 80%, and that's from Forbes. So you want people to remember you and think about you and have more of an emotional connection with your brand, which then translates into an increase in revenue. There are some very important things you need to be doing visually with your content, with your brand, that will make you stand out and stick out in people's minds. So I brought on someone who is fantastic at this on both sides of the spectrum. Brody Pearson is a top brand photographer. He's a content expert. You may have seen him in Forbes, Daily V, or TEDx. And by the way, you guys, he's also my favorite male Canadian. And we all know how I feel about my Canadians. Like, go Canada. I will be moving there someday, no doubt, depending on what happens in the presidential election. Thank you.
Canada welcomes you. Canada welcomes you. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I'm one of those people, like, I'm sure you guys see them, like, in walking around in, like, the touristy areas. Like, I would wear, like, the flag shirt and the hat. Like, anytime I come to Canada, I'm that person. Like, does anyone in Canada actually, like, wear their flag, or is it just tourists?
I mean, I think people do, but you usually see more tourists wearing them. I always laugh. You can always spot a tourist because they wear like a beaver shirt. our animal's like a beaver, and people wear beaver shirt. Like, okay, that's definitely a tourist. Or they wear like these really furry, fuzzy hats that they got like in a store.
Oh, the ones that like cover your ears.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've not gone that far, but I definitely am like down with rocking the flag, and I'm like,
yeah.
These are my people. I've yet to meet an asshole from Canada. Now, I'm sure they exist.
Yeah, they exist, but people are generally happy, I would say.
It's like, that's what I love about it. It's like happy and positive and very just pleasant in general.
Yeah, I would agree. For the most part, like I would say 90% of the interactions, but I would also say the same about people in the States. I mean, I think it's always, again, who you surround yourself with. I mean, every time I go down to California, when I met you in California, just everyone that I was surrounded with, they were just all amazing, positive, enterprising people, which I also love as well.
Well, I think the reason for that is, the other thing I'm well known for saying is like attracts like. So your energy like is so infectious. You're so positive, you're so passionate and excited about what you do, which, you know, translates and is infused in your brand. And it's so important for all of you guys to learn today from Brody, because, I mean, you're 23, right?
Yeah,
And not that like
23.
I hate, like I don't like, showcasing someone's age because who really gives a shit? But sometimes it's to make a really valid point. Like you've like blown up on the scene. It's not like you've been a photographer who's been grinding away at this for like 15 years, so to speak. You blew up, and I really think it's not just your talent, which of course you have a lot of, but it is how you brand and market yourself that is so brilliant, and the emotion behind it. So, first, tell us some stuff. Like, when did you get started in doing this whole brand photography thing? And when did you really like find your groove and your niche in this spot?
Yeah, so I always love to tell this story. So I grew up on a ranch in Canada. And when I say a ranch, the closest grocery store to my family is 45 minutes away. So to go get milk, bread, and eggs, we have to drive 45 minutes. And I was the only kid in my grade 10 class. And no, I was not homeschooled. We had our school from kindergarten to grade 12 had 66 people, a huge number. So big graduated class of one with myself. And it was just really cool. In my free time, the teachers would actually, to teach us, they would beam over a screen. And in my free time, I said, I want to learn something while I have this free time while I'm at school. Because if you finished your work early, then you got to learn something. So I was like, you know what? I want to learn photography. It seems like, the digital age is kind of coming up. At that point, I was in grade 10. So I watched, I don't know, hundreds of hours of YouTubes. And then I had 4 sisters as well. So that's kind of why I work in this industry. But I have 4 sisters as well. And I would take what I learned from YouTube and I would apply it. And so I would take some really, really cool photos. I mean, the first photos I took, I look back at them and I laugh at them, right? We always look back at those things. And I started posting on Facebook. And that's when I really realized, like, wow, I can make a business out of this. So I had a fully booked out wedding photography business in the summertime from age 16 to 18.
What? That's not normal. Why do you think these people hired a 16-year-old? That's nuts.
I think, it was coming all down to brand, number one. And number two, I really started understanding the whole power behind content marketing. So I wasn't just posting photos of like, check out this cool photo. I was actually giving them value, and then they seen value in that. So then they hired me, which is, I mean, looking back at when I was 16 to discover that, I guess I really don't know how it happened. Maybe it was something that was kind of more natural to me, but I always grew up. I mean, growing up on the ranch, I knew if you work hard and you serve people, you will win. So I think I just always have used that mindset. So fast forward 2 years or 1 year there, I put my camera actually away for a year because I went to university. And I finished out university. I think it played a huge integral role into where my business is at today. But when I was 19 years old, I picked up my camera again because my sister is in the online kind of coaching space. Her name is Lorraine, but she showed me that at the time, there was like probably 3 to 4 brand photographers in the world. Now they're popping up everywhere, right? But at the time, there was only 3 to 4. And she said, check this out. These are photographers who are taking photos and helping people build their brands. I was like, wow, I think I can do this. I love business. I was in business school at the time and I love photography. And I think my skill sets can really, really work. So I put my name out there, and she was going to this conference in Florence, Italy. So I was at this point, I was like, okay, this is something cool. I don't know how it's going to work. We put my name out there and I booked 5 clients in Florence, Italy.
Oh
my first ever brand shoot. Yeah. So from there, it just snowballed, and we can dive into that if you want more, but from there it just snowballed. And then I really, really got known as the expert in brand photography.
What do you think it is that sets you apart as a brand photographer from the other brand photographers that are out there? Like you said, like there's, quite a few that are popping up. I mean, but there's certain people that stand out, but there's quite a few that are popping up. What is your niche within the niche?
Yeah, my niche within the niche is understanding the marketing and the content behind that. So not only do I take photos that really help people understand their brands, I also have become so obsessed with studying the conversion of the photos, what works, what doesn't, how can we plug these visuals that we are creating, the scroll stopping images, into a content marketing plan that actually converts. That's where my wheelhouse is. I've been, obsessed for that. I mean, that's kind of been an evolution. At first, I could get away with just creating awesome scroll stopping images for the first 2 or 3 years. But after that, I was realizing I was taking these awesome images, but my clients weren't using them to their full capacity. So I was like, okay, there's something missing here. I need to add something into my services. And that's kind of when the whole marketing side and the content side is. So you can plug both in and then just like momentum forward for whatever you're selling.
Yeah, because just having scroll stopping images, unless the palette out there, because there's so many images, I call it the content monster.
Yeah.
It gets more and more hungry. So now it's like someone has to be like dangling off of a cliff wearing like a beautiful like white flowy dress. You know, like, and there's a
They're like
rainbow,
risking their
and
life.
there's a rainbow in the background too. And it's like, it has to be like so extreme for it to go viral. And you don't have to have your stuff go viral, but it's not enough anymore. You can't be hashtag basic. It can't just be like, okay, I'm just going to hire some like, you know, junior photographer and to take some pictures of me like frolicking at the beach and like sitting there typing with my laptop. Oh, look, I'm drinking coffee today. You know, like that's not enough. So what is the difference between those kind of images, which when they're professionally done, I have images like that. They're beautiful. They're nice. They can still be used. But what's that extra that makes it into scroll stopping and can have it convert?
Yeah, so I actually love that you asked this question, because in the last year I became very obsessed with this question, because I was getting, you know, and you're gonna be hearing me, one of the first photographers to say it is okay, and I actually endorse it, to mix in other content with it. Because here's the thing, I've realized there's two types of content. Number one is conversion content, and number two is growth content. So the growth content that you're talking about is you do a really, really good job of this with your quotes that are shareable and savable, your IGTVs, all these different things that are kind of more natural and in the moment are actually more growth oriented. Now, where I became really, really obsessed is I work with some pretty big people, and I asked them this question because I was very, very interested. I said, I would love to look at your analytics on the back end of Instagram. And on Instagram, if you click that little hamburger menu, you can actually see what posts of yours, number one, is good for reach. So that means that your reach is good growth content, or you can look at follows. There's tons of actually analytics that you can look at. So that was interesting. And I knew that those would be because I've studied content enough. But what I found was so interesting, and I've studied over 100 people now, and people who have like multi-million-dollar brands. And I'd be really, really interested, Tiff, to see what yours is. But if you look at website clicks, especially from Instagram, 80 to 90% of the photos that were getting website clicks were actually branded photos that were high end. They don't have the most comments or engagement, but they have the highest link clicks. And when I discovered that, I said, wow, there was power in that. Because, I mean, I'm the same with you. It's like, okay, if we're going to be putting out there, it has to be converting, right? It has to be, that's the whole reason. A pretty photo is not going to be good enough anymore, right? There's certain ways that you can take it, but they actually work for conversion. Because, and I come down to kind of these reasons, as number one, people see you as an authority. Number two, people say, okay, they see that professional photo in association with something that you're selling, especially if you use those types of photos in your conversion posts all the time. Now, of course, there's other elements of like your call to action and whatnot. And as you get deeper into your content, you can actually start studying that stuff of like what visual paired with what call to action gets conversion, what visual with what call to action gets growth. And now if you pair the two together, it's just this really, really cool thing. And I've just have become so obsessed. So there's so much we could talk about within that.
I mean, I'm like you. We could geek out all day on this. I really look at it like a chess game. Now, my like preferred platform is Instagram. I genuinely love it. I can tell you genuinely love it. You have to really genuinely love and be borderline weirdly obsessed for you to be able to have success faster. You can still be successful and not be as obsessed as maybe Brody and I are, but it is going to take you longer because I look at all of that. I study that. We have a meeting every single 3 weeks looking at all those things. Now, for me, the images of me don't, unless they're travel images, because I travel to a lot of fun places, don't convert as well as my infographics.
Okay,
However, the images of me, as long as it's like a nailed image, right? Even if you get like, I work with you and you give me like 100 beautifully edited photos.
Yeah.
And you take different shots. I have different facial expressions. Maybe it's the outfit, the color, my hair. It could be my vibe, even when we're taking it. Like if you like gave me tequila or not, I highly recommend tequila. Those pictures are way better because I hate having my picture taken, by the way. You could follow me with a video camera all day long, 24/7. I'd be fine. You put like a still camera in front of me and I'm awkward as fuck unless I'm buzzed. So
I think you should start your own reality show, Tiff's reality show.
It'd be entertaining and it would have to be highly censored. There'd be lots of like beeping because I say like what the fuck to myself at least like 50 times a day. Isn't like, that entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, all the time.
Either you think it or you say it. But what I do notice is, and I've seen stats like this, I can't remember it off the top of my head. When I have photos of me and I'm smiling, like happy teeth, laughter, smiling, those get the most website clicks.
Yeah. Yeah. So and that's really cool, you guys. So that's something from someone on the outside. You're like, okay, how the heck do I do this for myself? I always like to bring it back to the listener who might not be as nerdy as us in this kind of stuff. You guys, this is where you really, really just analyze your content. Now, what I said here is kind of a rule of thumb. So Tiff knows for her, actually, the infographics actually get tons of website clicks. So leverage that, right? So that's just knowing your analytics. As a general rule of thumb, though, kind of from going back to what I was saying, is 80 to 90% of people's stuff I study, that is kind of the back end, base end of stuff. And I just found that so interesting.
Yeah. Now, when I smile and it's a photo of me and it's like that winning shot, that does fall into the stats you're talking about.
Yeah.
That does convert the most.
Yeah.
But when I say infographics, I mean, you guys first of all, go look at my Instagram at ProjectME with Tiffany. Brody, what's yours? I didn't write it down before.
At Broads Images, BRODSIMAGS.
Now I'm going to write that down. Yeah. Broads Images. And if you, for some reason, are multitasking or something like that, you can always DM me.
Creep us.
Yeah. Creep us. I will give you his Instagram just so you want to be studying people. I'm not saying copying, but I'm not saying get into comparisonitis either, but you want to be studying people who have great engagement. I don't give a fuck how many followers they have. I'm talking about like great engagement and see what it is they're doing, the vibe, so you can start understanding this chess game that I call content marketing. Would you say that's a good suggestion?
Yeah, I agree. And I think you also have to realize the different seasons or the different strategies that people grow. How Tiffany grows her account is different than how I grow my account, right? So if you go over to my account, it's actually just a lot of images. So for myself, I'm just highly focused on conversion, a small audience of people, because my packages are a higher price package. So for myself, I'm like, okay, I don't need to get in front of as many people, but I know that the people that are watching my stuff are high conversion. So if you go over, for example, for Tiffany, she still sells high ticket, but she's constantly growing her audience through these shareable and savable posts, right? Especially for something, like your group program where it is a high ticket price, but you're going more for volume, right?
Correct. Like, yeah. Exactly. My Posse membership, that's $100 a month. So that's my lowest ticket entry point, aside from a freebie, to learn from me, right?
Yes.
So then I do have to reach more bodies, more of you guys, more of my ideal client in order to build that up. Absolutely.
Yes, exactly.
What are some mistakes or things that make you cringe when you see people trying to do maybe their own branding, or maybe they did hire somebody? What are some key things you're like, oh girl, I wish I could like DM you. It's really none of my business, but you got to stop doing that.
Yeah. So there's a couple. Number one is posting things that are completely irrelevant to whatever it is that you're selling. So I see this quite often. I do brand audits all the time, and I see this probably the most often, especially for women who have children. They post pictures of their children or their dogs or their healthy smoothie that they got. And you know what? No shame if that's you right now, because that's why you're listening to this podcast. But if that is you right now, this is something I would say to you is, why would someone choose to keep following with you? Because I'm just going to be totally honest. I know we're totally honest on this, is no one cares about your dog or your smoothie, or unless you're like Oprah, right?
Or your children.
Or your children, right? They might care about them in your stories, like here and there, mix them in with like your lifestyle content. But if you're, posting that weekly, and I think it does happen more often than not, that is one of the biggest mistakes I see.
Unless, for example, like I have an author on the show of They Say Parenting, and she's, published author with a book.
Yes.
And that is her niche, but she doesn't just show her kids like, oh, look, my kids are cute. She has there's a story with each image.
Exactly.
So she's not just showing her kids like doing something. There's an actual story element, and her images match that. Now, for people who aren't yet in a place, or for whatever reason, you guys maybe aren't believing in yourself enough to invest in having a brand photographer. By the way, I don't know if you know this, Brody, my first big investment with my personal brand, ProjectME with Tiffany Carter, was in doing a full high-end brand shoot. I mean, I didn't know of you at the time. But a full high-end, I get it. But I've also, my other companies and digital marketing in a different niche. But I also know the power of that. That's why, I'm all about the purple life. Everything's purple. I know how that works. Here's what is hard for, I know a lot of people is, okay, I know that's a lot of money, right? I might not be able to wrap myself around it, or I just truly don't have it. I don't even have room on my credit card. Can they get away with, at least temporarily, doing any of this stuff on their own, or is it just not going to work?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll be one of the first people is you can always do anything on your own, right? YouTube and Google is out there, right? I have a process that I teach we can go into if you want to, how you can actually do this at home by yourself. But what I will say is this, is if you are trying to sell anything kind of high ticket, I'm assuming that's what a lot of your listeners are. If they go over to your sales page and it's a bunch of iPhone selfie pictures or stock images, it will not convert as high. And I've tested that with different images and different people. That's just the truth, right? If you're just starting out and that breaks the bank and you can't feed your kids and your family and whatnot, obviously don't do that, right? Because there's ways, the iPhones take amazing pictures, and I'll be the first photographer to say that. I'm just real about that. But you have to also think, as you grow into your brand, if you're selling a package that is $1,000 plus, well, would you buy from someone $1,000 plus if they have iPhone pictures on all their sales pages, right?
No.
And on their websites, right?
No.
Probably not. Yes. So what I say to people is if that's where you are right now, do you want me to go into the process of kind of what I teach people?
Duh. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this is going back to the mistake. So the first one, obviously was posting things that are outside your niche. The second thing though is not properly planning. So a 4-step process that I use, and this is the process that I use with all my brand photography clients, is this. So number one is you have to have a plan. So if you're okay, I really, really don't have the money to invest right now into a high-end photographer or something for my brand, this is what I would do. Number one, sit down and make a plan. So what is the reason that you need the images? Are you going into a launch? What type of content do you need to create? Do you need sales page stuff? Do you need wide angle? And here's the thing, maybe it's not on your iPhone. Maybe you have a sister or brother who has a camera and you plan this thing out and you're a DIYer. This works. So ask yourself, what do I need to produce for images to sell out my product or service? What kind of vibe do I want to get off? Where do I need to be showing up? Because location is highly, highly important, especially in brand photography. So those are 3 questions that I would ask myself. Obviously, there's more that you would get in the more in-depth process, but that's the first one. Now, Part two of that is taking what you asked yourself and bringing it into visuals. So what does this mean? So you know what your vision and your mission, sorry, I'm having trouble talking, your mission and your vision, you know exactly kind of what you're needing for photos and visuals. Now it's time to go on to somewhere like Pinterest or Instagram and source out a vision board. So this is huge. This is what I do with my clients all the time. And I make it for them, but you can do this yourself. It's Pinterest is free. Instagram is free. You get a bunch of photos together in a collage, maybe 20 or 30 different photos of what you want your brand to kind of look like, what your vision is, right? Based on what you said in your planning process, and you get that together. So different poses, different locations, what's kind of the brand feel? Is it more contemporary? Is it more modern? Is it more rustic? Like all of these things really, really make an impact, right? When someone chooses to work with you. So you do that. So you create that awesome vision board so you kind of have a template. Now what you go and do actually is location scout. So a lot of times people just go out and say, okay, I'm going to go take photos today. Well, the reason your photos probably aren't working out if you're trying to go for this higher level brand is because you don't have a proper location that fits your brand. So what I highly recommend to do is go on Instagram on locations around your city or wherever you're planning to shoot. And what you can do is you can source out different places. Now, what I recommend, especially if you're local, is going to look for the hot spots that people are tagging a lot. Now, what this does is if people are searching on Instagram, these highly searched places, and you use the right content strategy, hashtags. I know you just did an episode on that. So awesome episode on the hashtag strategy, but your photo can actually show up, right? So we're not only taking photos for your brand, but we're also placing you in these different places where traffic is constantly driving over, right? So you want to find 2 to 4 locations like that, or maybe it's in the street that fit your brand. Hotel lobbies work really, really awesome. Airbnbs work really, really awesome. There's tons of different options. Then what you do is you go and take the photos. So you have your plan, you have your vision board, you know the locations of where you're going. Now it's time to go out and take those photos. So that's, if I was a DIYer, that's what I teach people do, because I know, not everybody has the means to invest highly into branding. Now, what I will say is if that really, really just gave you anxiety, that's how you hire someone like me, right?
Exactly why that was the first thing I invested in for ProjectME with Tiffany Carter. Number one, I hate having my photo taken.
Yeah.
So when you hire someone, like Brody, you get a shit ton of images of, depending on what package you buy, of course, but you can get a shit ton of images at once. So then I don't have to keep doing brand shoots all the time.
Yeah. We can create 3 months. It's true. And I know, and here's the thing, 90% of people who do it don't actually like it until you kind of do it more and more, and then people kind of break in. But what I always say is within 5 hours, you can create 3 months of visual content if you know what you're doing. So just think in 5 hours. Yeah.
And the subject has done their work too, because then there's the other element that I definitely want to get into that I really feel I've seen work really well for my brand. And I've seen it, in others, but I made a conscious effort and a point to do this, but I also hired someone to help me with it. Is that it doesn't mean you have to know what you're wearing. Everything has to be on that vibe and that energy and go along with your storyline. So it goes to what you're wearing, your outfit, your colors, your accessories, and also your props. Like it would be really weird, right? And wouldn't make sense for Brody to shoot me somewhere where it was like a bright red brick wall. Yeah. And now what am I going to do with that photo in anything? I can't do shit with it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to have like your color palette, available and match it with other things. It doesn't mean like, oh my God, Tiffany, like, how do you find all the purple things? It's like, well, we don't have to find purple locations, but there needs to be purple, gold, or neutral elements in whatever I have on. You're not going to see me wearing, emerald green in any of these photos, right?
Exactly, because that's a big thing, right? A lot of what separates, again, there's many things that separate like a everyday photographer from a brand photographer, but that's a huge one. Is a really, really good brand photographer understands the uses of these images. So not only are we taking these for social media, you have to understand that if you're going out to do a photo shoot, how will this show up on a sales page? How will this show up on a landing page? How will this show up, on cover art with Facebook, right? A brand photographer, or if you're kind of doing DIYing this yourself, you have to be thinking of those things, because otherwise you literally just wasted hours of your time for nothing.
Yeah. And it's a pain in the ass because, I learn everything I do. I learn more and more, right? Like I just launched a course. I learned a whole bunch, even though I've launched courses for multi-billion-dollar brands before, but never for my own brand. I learned a lot. Every photo shoot you do, I'm sure you learn more. We're always learning more. Something that the next time I do a photo shoot, which I need to book with you, by the way.
Sounds good.
Cha-ching!
Cha-ching. Let's go.
Is that, and not that I would have to think about it while working with you, which is why you hire a brand photographer versus someone who's just a, nature photographer or who takes portraits, right? There's a big difference, is exactly what you said. Okay, like I need, Brody, I'm going to need images for my banners, and I need images where like I'm pointing to things, right? Or where I'm positioned in a certain way where it looks like I'm looking at, the text in a Facebook banner or on a website. Now, I have some of that because I did hire a brand photographer, but I never thought about that. And that would have never crossed my mind. Why would it? That's not my area of expertise.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, again, it goes back to asking, if you're going out to hire a photographer, this is something like really good for everyone, because I see like thousands of dollars and hours wasted go down the drain. If you're going to hire someone for your brand to do photography, ask, do you understand how these photos lay on your website? Do you understand how they work on social media, right? Because vertical on Instagram is better. So there's just different ways for that. Do you understand how we can use this in things like Canva? Can my designer take this and can I have the full rights? This is another thing that I see people waste thousands of dollars on, is not all photographers give you all the rights, right? So as a brand photographer working with people who are creating content, like I don't care, use all the photos, put any filter. Yeah, right. But I see it happen. It happens.
My God, no, tell us, because I didn't know this, because I'm like you, I don't give a shit. It's like, oh, okay. Tell
that
us
is a big thing. So for anybody, ask these questions, because the everyday photographer will charge you is very transactional, right? So it's like, we do this and we get this many images out of it, right? And obviously there's going to be like probably a certain amount of money shots that you get, you get a certain amount for every hour that you do. But what a lot of people will do is like, okay, you can only use these images. You're not allowed to use any filters or presets, which again makes no sense. If you have certain presets or filters that you use on your Instagram that the photographer doesn't use, it just doesn't make sense, right? So these are just some questions to ask before going out and hiring one, because I've seen people come to me all the time and say, yeah, this is what happened. This is what happened. So just be aware of that.
Wow. I'm really glad that you shared that.
Watch the contracts. Watch the contracts of what people say in the contracts.
Well, at least that part I know. I learned that the hard way. That's how I lost $1 million when I was 30, by not reading a contract.
Wow. Well,
and not listening to my gut. So read your contracts. What are some like really strong things people could shift almost immediately in their content where they will see more growth, more engagement, or even just more of an emotional connection with their current audience?
Yeah. So number one, if you're not in front of that camera, I know there's still a lot of people who are not in front of that camera or not on video. Get in front of the camera. Your people, especially, I'm assuming everyone on here is a personal brand for the most part. If you are a personal brand and you're not showing up, even if you are a photographer listening to this, that's another big thing too, is like, I always advocate, for example, like photographers, you need to show up and be in front of the camera too. But no matter what your brand is, if you just start showing up in the images, that's like the biggest shift that you can make. So you say you're already doing that. You're like, okay, is what I'm doing working? Well, then you ask yourself, this is where you take some time and do a little bit of a research into your niche. So what I always like to say is get 10 kind of top experts or people that you love to follow if they are in your niche, and ask yourself, what makes me connect with their content? What kind of things are they, their audience really vibing with, right? Because here's the thing, online and social media, and I'm not saying go out and copy, but online and social media is a science. So you could actually study people's content and people's images, everything, seeing what's performing and seeing what their audience is loving. And then you can go out and create that yourself within half an hour. Most people won't do this. So I want you to be one person do this. Is within half an hour, you can find out so many things about your niche and what people are loving by just looking on Instagram and seeing what people are engaging with. So I would say that's the biggest one. And then you say, okay, how can I take what I learned and then how can I recreate that in my own brand, in my own voice? And that's probably the best way I recommend to kind of really jumpstart that if you feel stuck.
I love that. And, don't be basic.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, don't go on. And I'm all about like all these easy to use, like, word swag and these quote apps, but don't go like have like some, basic quote and you just fill like your feed with that now. And then maybe once in a while there's a photo of you, but it's like kind of dark and, and it doesn't really make sense, or it's like that. And then you're wondering why you don't have growth. Well, you've got to really ask yourself, what would my ideal client find? What do I tell you guys? Engaging, educational, entertaining, right? Now, here's something I'd love your take on. I know what you guys need to fucking know to be successful in your business. I know this because I've made a shit ton of mistakes and I've had a lot of wins and I've been doing this a long time. And so it's like, there's part of me that wants to, my content, I want to tell you what I know you need to know. Like, these are 3 important tips. These are 2 things I learned, right? But that's not necessarily what gets the most growth and engagement. It's not about Tiffany. You guys have to tell me what you like. And what I notice you guys like more, including on this podcast, is when I get to the emotion behind going after your dreams. Even though I want to tell you how to make that damn coin, you guys like that too, but you really like this emotion stuff more. Does that kind of make sense to you, Brody?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that all the time. People have to get in their heads and their hearts before they even step out to apply any of that, right? So what I see with that a lot is if you're constantly educating, right? Yes, that's awesome. You're showing up in value and you're showing people a possibility, right? But really, really go into the head and the heart of people because that's what gets the wallets of the people.
Because it's the stories and the emotion, like I was giving you some stats in the beginning, that really connect with your audience. So you have worked with some very powerful women in the, personal branding space, who've been at it, a long ass time. I mean, kudos to them, right? It takes a long time to get to where these people are at. What would you say that they do differently in their visual branding and their content that creates this raving fan-like community?
Yeah, I think the simplest answer is they show up. And people are like, oh, like that again. But I'm serious. If you look back into people who have like 10-year plus brands, they showed up every single day in some sort of medium, whether it's with photos. Again, that's another really, really good reason. If you're like, I have nothing to post today, well, pull from your bank of photos. They show up every single day with some sort of visual and some sort of written piece of content that they serve to their audience. And to me, that is the biggest thing, right? As they grow bigger and whatnot, they definitely invest into more things like their brand, like really, really nailing down what's our message, what's our market, how do we show up as that. But I think that the simple answer is honestly consistency, right? So they're always showing up, they're always getting in the emotional side, but also the possibility side. So that allows them to kind of create this raving fan and community base.
Do you have an opinion on color selection with people's brands?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, all of this always depends on your niche, right? So that's what I always take it back to at first is, okay, number one, what's your niche? And then number two, what do you want people to feel when they come into your brand? So there's multiple different colors. There's actually, I forget what the color spectrum wheel is. I'll send it to you and we can put it in the show notes or whatever. I forget the exact, but there's essentially different colors for what people feel. So do you want people to feel energized? Do you want people to feel cool and calm? Like all of this comes into place, right? When you're choosing your kind of brand colors, your brand fonts, your brand presets, like all of these different things. It does matter because again, when you land on someone's page, can you take note of how you feel? So I want you guys to kind of really elevate your branding minds here is every time you go over to an Instagram page or a Facebook page, ask yourself, do I like this? Number one, you can either say yes or no. If you say no, what don't I like about this? If you say yes, what do I like about this? How did it make you feel? Again, brand's all about how it makes you feel. Now, color selection and whatnot, in the details that does happen, but it all comes back to how does it make you feel? So I know for myself, when I want someone to land on my Instagram page, I want them to feel energized. I mean, I have energy. You probably can hear it through this podcast microphone, but that is my brand. I want people to feel energy right when they do. So my Instagram page and all my sales pages and everything better reflect that. So what I would recommend is picking what you want people to feel and then going based on from there, what colors, what schemes, all these different types of things that makes people feel that.
I love this. Go and head over again and peep us at Project Me with Tiffany and at Brods Images, BRODS Images, and do that exercise and DM us. Say oh, this is how I felt. And just what first comes to your mind. I'm talking like the 3-second rule. And you're not going to offend either of us. Like, I would love to know. I know Brody would love to know. Like, what I go for is I want people to feel safe, welcomed, and empowered. Like that
which
yes,
is purple.
like
Purple
fuck yes feeling.
Yeah. I love, and I mean, again, your branding speaks to that.
Yeah. And that was by design. My other company's tagline is branding by design. Just like you said, it's a science. It's on purpose. It's purposeful branding. Oh my God. Is that a hashtag?
That's a new hashtag.
We need to write it down. Purposeful.
Trademark that.
Wait a second. That's so good. If you guys loved what you learned today about visual branding, about creating content that actually converts, all these amazing tips and strategies that Brody shared, take a screenshot right now and share this episode inside social media and your Instagram stories and tag us at Project Me with Tiffany and again at Brods, BRODS Images. If you're driving, if you're pooping, if you're at work hiding from your boss and you cannot write down or remember Brody's Instagram, just make sure you tag me and then I will repost it in stories and I will make sure he gets tagged. This way we know like if what we shared with you today actually is helpful, if you enjoyed it. Remember, this podcast costs money to produce. I do it for you. So if you're like, that was a lame topic, you guys. Like, I don't want that. Well, then
never bring him on again.
Right. Never bring him on. He's horrible. He's such a downer. I hate Canadians. Well, also, and for my Canadian listeners, you really should share this in your stories because, just fun fact, it's a whole separate thing in iTunes for reviews when you go into another country. So we want to definitely support the Canadians, support Canadian listeners, but we need you guys to do that. Brody, I have to ask you this last question. There's always like this lingering question that's very fucking random that I have for people.
I love it.
And you obviously don't have to say who, what is like a nightmare type of person for you to shoot?
Ooh, I've never been asked this before.
I have to ask.
Am I making my own grave right now?
No, you don't have to say who. Just like the
no, I know.
The type of person. Just so maybe you guys listening can kind of like check your vibe before you work with someone.
Yeah, I think my biggest one is people who don't like to have fun. So people who are like, who don't, I mean, you don't have to bring the same energy as me. Obviously, I'm just like, woo! But I mean, I think people who aren't excited about what they're doing, I think that's the biggest thing. Because then it's like you work with someone who's not excited, and it's like, okay, well, I'm excited for you, but you're not excited. So it's just like this weird thing. And I'm like, are you really supposed to be doing what you're doing, you guys? And if I know one thing is, if you're just starting out, if you're 10 years in business, this is something that I always say is, no matter what you do, bring the energy and bring the excitement. Maybe even if you're an introvert, it doesn't mean that you have to be the loudest person in the room. Just bring your excitement and your passion, and whatever you do and how you show up, it will shine no matter what. So that's what I would say.
I 1,000% agree. Get the pole out of your ass. If you have to have tequila, listen, like I'm weird. I can be camera shy. So mommy has tequila. We put on some like good music and like
you play on your dinero,
exactly.
right?
I'm like, we jam out, and like I'm a complete, I loosen up because I do care. That doesn't mean I love having my picture taken. Maybe I probably never will. I've had my picture taken a gazillion times. I probably never will, but what I love is I love what I do, and I love you guys, and I love entertaining you guys and making you laugh and making you feel those feelings that we talked about. And I know a big part of that is showing up and doing these shoots. So if I don't come with the energy that I want to have translated in those photos, guess what? Brody's not a magician. You can only do so much, right?
Yeah. And that's what I always say to people is, if this is for all of you who don't like their photo taken, I love what Tiff said is, if you don't like your photo taken, I want you to flip your mindset here and say these photos and how I'm showing up are not for me. They're from the people I'm serving. That's how you do it.
Boom. You guys take that damn screenshot, tag me at ProjectME with Tiffany, tag Brody at Broads, BRODS images, and feel free. I can vouch for Brody. He does check his DMs just like I do. He replies to everyone. You have any questions about working with him or any questions about like branding in general, DM him. Is there anything else that you have for the listeners or anything else they can check out of yours to just get more information on all this good stuff?
Yeah. So if they want, and this is for your listeners, so I'm giving your listeners a good. So if they want help with content and you struggle with content, DM me the words content course, and I will give you my $200 content course absolutely free.
What? Are you serious?
Yeah. For your people.
Dude, see what I said about Canadians? That's, my God, thank you. You guys are nuts if you don't take advantage of it, because I've seen snippets of this course and I know what goes into putting that together, and it's not basic. Trust me. If you guys don't do that, then I don't even know. You guys need help. Thank you, Brody, so much. That's so generous of you for your time, your energy. I adore you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tiff. It's always so much fun. I love it.
Bye. If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a 5-star review on iTunes. Not only will this make me super happy, but it will allow more listeners to find our special show. Simply help me help others.